I will load on participants now. Welcome الكاميرا لغا جمال. جمال. I can't see the participants. I see participants coming, but I'm not there. Hello, Daniela.
You have reached Daniela Lopez.
Hi, Daniela. Did you open the webinar? Thank you. Because I'm in and I can't see the participants. Jamal, Hello, hello, can you hear me? Hang on, can you hear me, please? Yes, yes, I've got, okay, people, you join us. People can hear me now, thank you. Thank you. I sent you the email.
Which one? That's you?
To Swinburne.
Oh, to Swinburne. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. And I'm sorry to take this time to wonder where to start or how to start. I would like to welcome every one of you. I'm glad you can all hear me. And if you don't mind, let me acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. This is good morning. Okay. Good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning. Now, look, let me first acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we are in today, and the elders past and present. And this is really a privilege to have this opportunity to share the experience and the lifestyle and the values of our communities with the mainstream. Better understanding between us is important so that we all can move together. We all respect each other and we all value a common value that will take us for the future. And this is the purpose of this. Working with the anti-racism strategy for us is more on educating, filling the gap. In fact, Mohammed is with us today, Dr. Mohammed Ali from Griffith University, whom we have a good partnership with Swinburne University and Griffith as Ali is, and Stefan Shepard, working first on the literature review. What are the gaps? What gaps does it exist? Why people can't understand one or the other? So they did a research, a literature review. And this literature review was prepared by Muhammad Ali, who is our boy. He used to be in Carlton. He had experience on the journey of the process of young people, the Victoria Police, and many other issues that was happening in Carlton. So from here, I will let Muhammad speak, and our speaker, Zahra, I will introduce her later, but I will first let Muhammad introduce himself and get into the point of giving us some 5-10 minutes of the brief preview of what's the gap. Muhammad, can you hear me? Muhammad, can you hear me? Ooh. Muhammad? Yes, you can. Okay, that's great. So would you mind, so are you muted or can you unmute yourself? I can hear, but I can't speak. Ooh. Ooh. Interesting. You can hear, but you can't speak. Live. Okay, I will be trying to manage how to make the speaker work. Oh, system. Okay, Mohammed, where are you? Mohammed. Allah. Okay, Mohammed, can you talk now?
Yep, can you hear me now?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Can everyone hear Mohammed? Yes. Yes, they do. Can you, Mohammed, unmute yourself and continue?
Yep. So just a brief introduction about me. So my name is Mohammed. I'm a PhD student at Griffith University at the Criminology Institute. So I was fortunate enough to be approached by Dr. Berhan to work on a literature review that looked at community engagement strategies for African Australians, and based on that review to provide some recommendations for VicPol on how they engage with African Australian communities. So what I'll do is I'll provide a bit of an overview of the, I guess, aim of what we found, the aim of the project itself, what we found, and then I'll go through some of the challenges, the socio-cultural challenges that we identified, and then talk a bit about the recommendations. So in terms of the aim, really what we wanted to do was to look at the literature and see what community engagement strategies build trust and legitimacy with people, and then to look at some of the barriers to engagement that police agencies and particularly VicPol might come across in their engagement efforts with African communities. So what we found based on our review was, although there's quite a lot of popularity around community engagement initiatives, very few studies have actually been conducted to evaluate the efficacy of those projects as a paradigm, as a specific initiative, or even as a set of programs themselves. However, despite that gap in the literature, we found that the available research does suggest that community engagement has a positive effect on people's perceptions of police, including their perceptions of trust and police legitimacy. So the types of engagement strategies that are included in those studies typically include community meetings, sporting and recreational activities for youth, police confidence patrols, door knocking initiatives, among a few other things. So those are the strategies that we've identified that actually have some evidence-based support behind them. So then we looked at what some barriers are that police might come across in implementing engagement initiatives with African Australians. So the first one that we identified was cultural sensitivity, or cultural insensitivity rather. So in the context of engagement, when police fail to consider developing programs in a culturally sensitive manner, what they can run the risk of is signaling insincerity towards the African Australian communities who they wish to build bridges with. So this might potentially be viewed by community members as police sort of engaging in a checker box type approach when they engage with African Australians. And that sort of criticism, or that barrier, has been identified with other ethnic minority groups as well. So it's a recurring theme there that should be addressed. Similarly, police need to recognize the diversity that exists within African Australian communities. So sometimes there is the approach that African Australian communities are seen as one homogenous group. But we recommend that when developing and implementing programs, that police consider the diversity that exists within African Australians. And the reason for that is it will allow police to identify issues that affect African Australian communities on the whole. So things such as perceived racial profiling or discriminatory police practices, and things that also affect subgroups of African Australian communities. So for example, African Australian communities who are Somali and Eritrean might have some sort of concerns regarding community engagement initiatives as being a ploy or sort of a guise for counterintelligence gathering operations. So we know that the anti-terror policing powers are quite broad, and so a lot of people have some fears around participating in engagement initiatives because of that. So understanding that sort of diversity will actually allow police to better tailor their engagement initiatives to specific subgroups within the African Australian community. Next up is language and trauma barriers to participation. So we know that pre-migratory experiences can shape people's willingness to participate in police engagement initiatives. These include not being proficient in English, and that, that may preclude some members of the African Australian community from participating in initiatives designed to elicit feedback from police about their service delivery, which is really important because it means that a lot of people in the community aren't given a voice to provide some input on how police can improve their service delivery to the community. Similarly, police should be aware of pre-migratory trauma. So a lot of, or some people from African Australian communities have experienced quite considerable trauma. And sometimes that's at the hands of authorities in their countries of origins, including police. So loss of family and friends, often at the hands of police. And this has implications for their willingness to engage with police in Australia. And also has impacts on some psychological self-concept, so self-confidence and self-esteem, and that can present a barrier to their willingness to engage in certain types of initiatives fully. Next was overcoming perceptions of racial profiling and institutional racism. So we know that young African Australians in particular feel targeted by discriminatory policing practices. And this presents a really big obstacle, as many of us know, for their willingness to engage with police, but also shapes their trust and perceptions of police legitimacy, which is a really big issue because we know that when people trust the police and view them as legitimate, they're more willing to cooperate, and that cooperation extends to their willingness to report self-victimization. So instances of discrimination, reporting stuff like that to the police is tied to how much people trust the police and view them as legitimate. So there needs to be recognition on the part of police that this is something that can present a really huge barrier. And in doing so, police need to take a position that trust is not something that is assumed. It's something that needs to be won from the community. The last barrier we identified was the need for police to move beyond the usual groups when forming partnerships. So we know from some literature that police often engage with a very small group of people when forming engagement partnerships. And this can often be seen as problematic by the broader community itself, because it might be seen as police wanting to engage with people who hold more palatable views. So people who sort of steer clear from engaging in discussion around really needed and sensitive topics. So we're talking here about police discrimination and racism as well. So there needs to be maximization of participation from all sectors of the community. And this means that police might actually have to go beyond engaging with people who are seen as quote unquote acceptable in order to get to hard to reach groups, particularly young people who are often very weary of engaging in these sorts of initiatives, but are likely the ones who are going to benefit the most from these engagement initiatives as well. So in light of all that, we had some recommendations for police. So I'll just go through those quickly. So the first one was the need for police to locate sub-communities. So in the engagement space, police have to be aware that there are different subgroups within the African Australian community, and they have to rely on evidence-based approaches to build trust with different sub-communities. So this might look like meet and greets alongside respected community members. Secondly, police need to recognize and not underestimate the effect of perceived police discrimination on African Australians' trust in the police. So what we recommend here is police work on building contingent trust. So that's short-term trust that can lay the foundation for implicit long-term trust. And this can be done through displays of trustworthiness. So communicating to African Australians that they have their needs ahead of any sort of intelligence or crime control objectives that they also hold. So to do this, they might wish to draw on some engagement strategies that include ways that might improve community members' quality of life, particularly for young people. So some studies have looked at tutoring programs, so after school programs for young people. And I think that's a really promising initiative there. One huge problem at the moment with community engagement initiatives is a lot of frontline officers, so that's uniformed officers, often say that they don't have the time to engage in these sorts of initiatives because they have such huge workloads. So what happens is community engagement initiatives are often, the bulk of it is often carried out by liaison officers. And this creates this sense of good cops and bad cops demarcation. So seeing the liaison officers as good cops and uniformed officers as bad cops. So based on this, we recommend that police, particularly uniformed officers, rely on principles of procedural justice when engaging with African Australians in their operational day-to-day activities. So procedural justice is really at the heart of these engagement initiatives, and it simply is about providing respect, a voice, bias-free decision-making, communication sort of signals to people during interactions. And this we believe is a really simple way for uniformed officers to also carry out community engagement initiatives that don't take up a huge bulk of their operational time. And lastly, the final recommendation was police needing to be open to criticism. And this is criticism from people who have grievances about prior instances of police discrimination, particularly young people. So with the literature, we note that sometimes young people feel that they're not heard when they do bring up a lot of issues with police. And this is something that really needs to be addressed for there to be trust and perceived legitimacy on the part of the community. So we hope that these recommendations sort of set a bit of a foundation and can be used as part of a broader toolkit by police when engaging with African Australians. We certainly acknowledge that police agencies, particularly VicPol, have made some really good steps towards addressing many of the stuff that I've identified here. But we think that, well, we hope really that some of these recommendations can actually add to those initiatives and improve trust and legitimacy on the part of African Australian communities. So that's the gist of the review there. So if people have any questions, I'm happy to sort of take those at this stage.
Hello, Mohammed?
Yep.
Yes. Now, is anyone has any question or comment to make? I will unmute you if you can just ask me to to get anyone to unmute them. Okay. Anyone, any question to ask with regard to what Mohammed has been saying? Peter, I mean, meeting, I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Anyone, any question to Mohammed? I'm unmuted, most of you. Any question? No.
Hi, Mohammed.
Yes.
Could
Hi.
you please share? Could you please share some information about the toolkit which you have informed to us?
Yeah, so when I say toolkit, I'm talking about the community engagement strategies that police already use. So they use a whole bunch of different strategies when they're doing community engagement, not just with African Australians, but other minority groups as well. But one of the issue is that these strategies are often not tailored for specific groups. So the purpose of our review was to identify what is being done at the moment and then identify some challenges that apply specifically to African Australians, but can also extend to other groups, and then use the recommendations from that as part of a toolkit to engage with different communities. So with building trust and legitimacy, it's very difficult because there isn't one specific thing that police can do that actually builds trust and legitimacy. So they often have to adopt a lot of different strategies. So that's what I sort of mean when I say toolkit. So using all of these different strategies on a needs basis. I hope that answers the question, Jaspreet.
Yep. Thanks for informing.
Yeah, I just let you in. Okay. Let me ask Mohammed. Mohammed?
Yes, Dr. Burhan.
Now, given your experience in Carlton, given the relationship between police and the community, how do you see the front line versus the senior police relationship? Because what my experience was, and correct me if I'm wrong here, there was more relationship with the senior police than was with the police in front line.
Mm-hmm.
But how can we improve that, or how can we advise police to get their front line more connected to the community while they're doing what they're doing? Particularly from my experience, while you probably were a child, in Flemington back in 2006, 2007, and all that stuff. We had, the change of police was very frequent, and the challenge for the community and the police to work together was very hard. And still I see that gap exists. So what do you think on that?
Yeah, that's a really big issue, and really it speaks to more senior police officers understanding and recognizing the importance of community engagement and building trust. But a lot of that sometimes doesn't trickle down to frontline officers. And I think part of the reason, well, there's many reasons, but one of the reasons is frontline uniformed officers often they're a little bit reluctant to engage in community engagement strategies because they see it as a very soft approach. They see it as something that adds to their workload already. So they often handball those sorts of tasks to liaison officers. So one thing that needs to happen is community engagement the importance of community engagement needs to be something that is constantly trained amongst general uniformed officers. And also they need to be given some strategies that they can use that doesn't take up a lot of their workload. So when we talk about procedural justice, which has a big body of evidence behind it, we're talking about police officers out on the street when they engage with African Australians or young people to communicate respect, to communicate that they are taking bias-free decisions in the context of that interaction, to give those young people a voice. And to do that, it's very simple relative to these community engagement initiatives that liaison officers engage in.
Sorry.
Yeah, so to summarize, what we need to do is we need to make sure that the importance of community engagement is constantly trained to uniformed officers as part of their training process. And we also need to advocate for the use of procedural justice in their day-to-day engagement or interaction with people, particularly people from minority communities, because that shows that the police, particularly the ones that they have to actually deal with on a day-to-day basis, respect them. They're making decisions in a non-biased manner, and all of that will actually build trust in the long term. But the difficulty is sometimes the senior police management, they might move around. Policing is one of those professions where people move around a lot. So I think rather than advocating the importance of this to specific people, I think the advocacy needs to be targeted towards training. So making sure this stuff is trained at the policing colleges.
Thank you. Now, look, I can't agree more. That is absolutely the point that I see, because when they come in, the new police, we had big experience with them. And I'm sure you as a child had much more into that experience. So moving forward is we need to learn from those experiences. And thank you, Mohammed, because you've done an excellent job, and I look working more on this together. And would you mind now, we need to introduce our key speaker today, Zahra Mustafa. Well, Zahra is a young, very motivated young mother with two beautiful adult children. She lived in Ivanhoe, and she has been involved in many small schools and football clubs and many other stuff. And she's a qualified sort of engineer, and has been communicating throughout the Somali community and beyond in many issues. Her experience bringing up children in a multicultural society was one of the areas that I've spoken with her. In fact, she's a furious standing woman now for the next election to put this on the national agenda, which I would welcome her role in taking one step forward to bring our community into the front line of the broader society in discussing about multiculturalism, be it of employment and other issues that our community and our children facing. So Zahra, with so much ado, I would like you to step in, and I'm sure we'll hear more from you on how the Somali family value bringing up children is. And what can we learn? Because we see a gap, and how do we fill that gap, given your experience in this? Thank you, Zahra.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the kind introduction, Burhan. Bringing children and in Somali family value, there's a big aspect of sharing. I think it's one thing, and I think back home, I think there has always been a village raising the kids. We say that in Australia, but we don't have that village at the moment in our society structure. So I've got a photos of my my family back home. So that's half of them, not all of them. So we are quite big families, and the whole community is raising the children with you. And I grew up in that environment. But bringing up children here in Australia, it's quite different than bringing children in Somalia. So I'm aware a lot of the communities, they struggle of, you know, the two country, the two society. I think the key Somali family value is respect for elders, respect for parents, respect to people who are that older than you. But at the same time, those who are teaching you, because everyone around you is teaching you, and respect is being quite a key. I've got two young children, one is 20, one is 19. And for me, in raising children in Australia, in Melbourne, the key was that I needed to be involved as a parent. I needed to be where they were, either with a local school, volunteering, with a participating, you know, classroom reading, or the kids doing what they wanted to do. So it's just getting them involved as many as they wanted to do. And I think sometimes has to come from the children wanting to do these things, not the parents. And in that context, I remember first that my son wanted to play footy, and I have no understanding of football rule. And I went to the local club and I put my hand up to be the registration secretary of the local junior footy club. So they enjoyed it, and I also enjoyed it, you know, volunteering, giving back, and then, you know, understanding. At that time I had a big headscarf, and so now I don't, but it was quite different. And how I was received, it was quite different. I think there was a bit of a hesitancy, this unknown person coming into the club, suddenly handling registration. But then over time it took to build those trusts and, you know, and be part of that community. Yeah, there's elements of challenges and racism. I remember my daughter was 4 years old, and another 4 years old said to her, "We don't play people with your skin color." So my 4-year-old come running. This was at a footy game on Sunday morning, and my daughter came running and said to me, "Oh, such and such said this." And I went to the parents and I said, "Look, this incident happened. Can we talk about it and get your child to apologize for it?" But the parent just turned around and run away in the other direction, and they end up, I haven't seen them. I've seen them around in the community. So that day I've learned that, oh, actually I might have been a bit naive about race and racism, that I need to talk to the kids, but then starting talking to the club and you know, saying, look, we can't have another 4-year-old saying this to another 4-year-old. So there's that aspect where I know a lot of the Somali community and the mothers not being able to go that level of me going into a footy club that I don't know anyone and getting involved. And part of the Somali culture is it's who you know. If they know someone they know involved in that local club, they will get involved, but if they don't, they wouldn't. And so it's encouraging the more parent involved, but then you have the first generation migrant whose the challenge is they don't speak English. And so that is another aspect of that. How could you expecting them to get involved when they can't? So I've been a younger mother who was educated, that helped me to be a role model and being involved. And my both children played at sports across the community. They both were involved in the Air Force Cadet. They did a taekwondos, swimmings, and some stage my son has been coaching the local basketball club past 4 years, coaching, and the kids love him and the club love him. And it's just that relationship that's been formed over time. And for me, my approach was, oh my God, I'm in a new country. I need to learn the culture. I need to get involved. I need to know what I need to do for my kids, but also what I need to do for my community to give back. So getting involved was a key element of had them being staying out of trouble, keeping them busy, but also them understanding what it means to be part of a community. I mean, when my son wanted to get a job, it was easier for him to get a job because everyone knew him, that we were involved in the local footy club or this, you know, primary school. I was a school counselor. And so it's you creating your own community. And for me was focusing on creating my own family here. I arrived here, I need to create my own family. And that kind of made a significant change for me and for them. But also I understand there's a lot of Somali mothers who are also doing some good works in that area, but also we have that older generation that can't speak proper English, that sometimes the kids are translating, and that it's a problem. As a mother, yes, I always get concerned if my child's being picked, you know, he was doing something in the police and what could happen, will that be a bias against him? So it's always that question that you always have. But what I learned is that every time they went, I was the only mum. You know, the other mothers will say to me, oh, the boys are going to birthday parties, Zara, can you take them? So I was the youngest mother out of the group, which a bit more closer to their ages, being a teenager, who can understand and hear them what they say without not judging them, but we are not saying to the other parents. So they always felt with me or my house or my car, there was a safe space and they could say whatever they wanted to say. And I gave them the reassurance that whatever, you know, they've shared with me, that would be a safer space for them, and I wouldn't repeat to the other parent or another one. So I still get to enjoy those, you know, now they're all 20, 19 years, those relationships that I formed with these young people who are various different backgrounds as well. But it is challenging itself sometimes when you've been stereotyped, that you get involved, that, oh, you know, people look like you are not usually doing this. So integration is really important, but integration cannot be one way. It has to be two ways. We can't expect the people when they come, they can integrate, but we want the mainstream society need to welcome, we need to invite them. And so we build this a bridge between and a trust where, like, oh, you're a human, I'm a human. But sometimes it's challenging, especially if there's a language barrier. It's been a great experience of being part of the community, and I'm in Ivanhoe, Heidelberg as well. And I worked with the police as a translator when I was studying my architectural degree through the domestic violence or child protection. And it takes a really hard work to kind of get the message across what someone's needs, especially when there is a language barrier in some sense. But for me, it's been quite rewarding to be able to get involved, whether it was a ANZ Day march on you know, every April, where the kids need to get up at 5:30 and be at the RSL club or the military base at 6 a.m. for them to start parading and doing their marching. You know, and also people kind of welcoming me because I was standing there with them and talking to the local community, you know, returned veterans and the issue they faced. So I think if we are quite open and welcoming one another, I think it becomes easy to integrate. And I think I always thought integration is two-way, not one way. Thank you. If anyone have any question, you can ask me.
Thank you, Zahara. That was wonderful. Now, look, I welcome anyone to ask question and you know, bring things that make you feel like something you don't understand in the community or in the Somalis in particular, with a family value or with the challenges dealing with young people. If you have any question, I would welcome anyone. Any question? Any question? Now, let me start for you, Zahara, and then we will see others may come in. If I was a Victoria policeman and I have a little interaction with Somalis, how would you expect me to understand them, or what can I do to get closer to the young people's mind to help them and to understand my work that I do as a police? What advice can you give?
I will say is that first you kind of engage them in that human level, not as the officer, as the authority. And I think I say, hey mate, how are you? Just to have a chit chat before you get to the issue. And I think the Somali young man and a boy and a girl, I think will feel a bit more comfortable. I think it's just, I think there's that mentality. If the police sees you, they're going to hurt you, or, you know, you're in trouble if you talk to the police. So that's already registered in their mindset. And I think it just, and then as an officer, you're there to do a job. And sometimes you're not even thinking, you know, the relationship. But I think the key is building relationship and having conversations like, hey, what's going on? And just the normal, how are you doing? What's your name? How, you know, how's mom and dad? You know, like, it's who's here with you? And I think it's just making I think sometimes it's our turn that makes a difference, whether it makes us, you know, quite, we feel, you know, do I need to be defensive, or do I need to be running away, or do I need to talk to what's going on? And giving the insurance what's going on, whatever it is, it's have a solution, and it's not going to be you being punished. I think the young Somali's mind is, if the police get you, you'll be in trouble. If there's you and, you know, a white kid, there will be a different, you be treated differently. And in some sense, it might be true, it might not be true, but I think we need to work on that, knowing that that child or that teenager or that young man are already in a defense. But I think it's going through to them and having a conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone with any question? I think, okay, Sarah. Welcome.
Hi, Zara. Thank you so much for sharing that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering what your experience was for your children in schooling. We probably don't have a lot of time, but just a few brief insights for teachers, I suppose. What messages would you give to teachers to support members of the Somali community, please?
My experience schools, some are being great, some of them aren't being great. So there's a time where you know, that teachers will go and above and beyond to the kids, and in primary schools really you do a good job, you know, keeping the kids engaged. That I will say, I think there's two different levels. Primary school, there's the element of reading and writing, and the kid taking back a book home and expecting the parent to read for them every night for them to develop their numeracy, and literacy. But you've got a parent who can't. So I think schools can assist in that area, where you can't assume that child will take the book home and their parent will read to them and understand. That's not the case in every Somali household. And the kids need that early age, someone to read. So if the schools can set it up some sort of reading support, especially in a prep and grade 1, until the kids are comfortable to read on their own, would be a support for Somali families. When it comes to, I'm breaking it down, so when it comes to high school, I think the significant challenge that the Somali community and the mothers and the fathers that I speak to was, when their kids get to year 10, the schools are tended to push the kids out, to ask them, oh, you can't do PCE, you have to go. And what does that mean for, you know, 16, 17-year-old being told you're no longer going to be part of your school community, no longer going to be part of your friends? And that's something my child experienced. And by law in Victoria, we're not supposed to do that. School are not supposed to do that, but that still happens. So I end up fighting, you know, with this school until my son stayed, and I said to them, you've got a duty of care by law to provide and educate him for this child. So I think it's some sort of a social support or psychological support will be great for the Somali community. And if you could get someone who's African background or Somali background as a social worker working with schools, I think that will make a significant difference, because that will, you know, break down the barrier of, I feel uncomfortable to tell what's going on at home to my teacher, but they might feel comfortable telling what's going on to the psychologist or the counselor because they've got similar cultural background. And I say that because as humans, we feel comfortable what we know, what we, who we can relate to. That's our brain and how we are as humans. We can't deny that. But having those supports, I think, will make a significant difference, especially in high school and adolescent time, because adolescent is really challenging time for all teenagers, whether you're Somali or not Somali, it's hard time. And for me, what has helped me was that I did a training through Melbourne University, 8 weeks, a program called Tuning to Teen, which is how it made me understand what it meant going through adolescence. So it made me towards compassionate my children and my teenage kids. And so I think some sort of education programs, and these programs came through the school. So if you can provide some sort of a developmental stage and understanding adolescence or early age for the parents, so the parents understand what children's needs are. We know all psychologists, I think being a parent is the toughest job. You have a child and you have no training how to be a parent. I think that will make a significant difference for the Somali families. But then having those programs being run somewhere they can relate to, whether they're African or whether they're Somali, I think that will be a significant support that school could provide, but also ensuring that kids are not being pushed out at year 10 and being told to leave, and understanding the damage that will do that to that child the rest of their lives. Feeling that you're no longer wanted in your school, and the people who are got a duty of care by law to look after you are asking you to leave. So it's some sort of abandonment, I think, in the system. I know we can do better as a society and as a country, and that's what made me actually run, because I know things needs to change. But I think there's a lot of challenges, but I think people can live up to those solutions and we can make a difference.
Thank you, Zahra. Well, look, if I can add to your point, and also look, dealing with organization and dealing with individuals are really different. For me, what I see, dealing with education and teachers and school need to have a separate design versus, I'm working with Victoria Police in trying to step this understanding, because I see that, I'd like to get our children out of the justice system. And the only way is the interaction with police. But when it comes to schools and teachers, I think the local community need to be part of the school, because we need to also educate the school as a whole, rather than as a teachers. Because I see a gap between the school understanding its local environment and having a teacher which may come and go. But we need to look to work with our local communities in different ways, because we need to, those are the kids that are coming. When people are not understanding their locals, always there's a clash. And to be honest with you, nurturing a child, as Zahra's in introduction said, it takes a village. So how about we say it takes even a suburb in our terms of local language, and bring the family and the community as part of the school team, not only for meetings, because people see meetings with no action. Our community has so many meetings and they don't see that meeting ending into some action, because they expect action after the meeting. Probably takes a year or 2 or 3, but when people don't see that action outcome, they just give up. But if they are part of the school, I think that will help the process, because they will be in the process of communicating and they take responsibility as well. The school takes responsibility, and the families and the community will take responsibility, and the child will be nurtured from both sides. But at this stage, we're nurturing child from 2 different sides. The family separately from the school, and the school separately from the family. So let's create a bonding relationship that would nurture better for a child future, because one child failure means the whole school failure is the way I see it. Thank you. If anyone has any comment or any question, welcome.
I want to add a comment. I think but also in the community, and I talk to them every day, and I said to them, you know, there's this thing culture, they say, you the Somali society are quite farmers and pastorals, so you're kind of looking after your camels and your herds. So to me, the way you go after them every day, take them in the morning and bring them back, that's the kids. You need to go be where they are. And so it's helping them to understand part of them supporting and integration is them being part of the school community, or whether you help the canteen, and the kids love that. The kids would love to see their parents participated, or you're doing organizing activity for the whole class after school. So it's a little things that are not really big thing, and I know I'm jumping into the depth, but I think it's small things will make a difference. But also what it does is, for the parent, you form a friendship with this other parent, and then they become your friends, you become your community, and then you know all your child's friends' parents, so you feel comfortable and safe for them going to sleep over to someone else. That's something that we don't do in the Somali community, because we don't know, and no one wants to send their child somewhere they don't know culturally. So I think, yeah, having a school community, as you said, Burhan, is important.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, look, it is a steps from all of us to see a child nurtured and success, because we can't afford, not to make him a taxpayer, but a tax user from a consumer point of view, but from a human point of view, to create good humans is in the best interest of all of us. And that way we can nurture a child if we work together, particularly in schools terms. With Victoria Police, we need to look at different strategy, and that strategy was my problem with Victoria Police has been always the continuous change in the police station, with new ones coming and all that stuff, and that requires a different way of looking to that change that happens, as it happened in Footscray, in Flemington, and a few other areas that have experienced it. And that's part of the police process. We can't change it, but we need to work how to make it. And in fact, we need to connect the community with the Victoria Police Academy, where they could come and show their culture and talk with those new recruits as well, as a means of way forward. But look, anyone with any comment is welcome before we move into time that is coming close to what we said. Any question? Any comments? Well, look, I also like to acknowledge the partners that we're working with, Victoria Police and with Joshua Social Services, Morris Blackburn, and Victoria University, Much Work, Amos. We're working in partnership to get African young people to participate and join Victoria Police. We need every one of us to help that journey. It's not an easy to change an institution like Victoria Police, but I would appreciate everyone putting some contribution. We can make a better change. And this is a pilot for the multicultural society, not only for the Africans. Africans is now taken as a pilot, but I hope this will open for all the multicultural societies. The same goes for the schools. The problem in this country, people come being teachers back home, but here to qualify to be a teacher, it's like a climbing sky. So we need to look to this to make everyone participating and contributing for the multicultural Australia that we are creating now. Australia is now, the multicultural society has a significant number, and that's a fact of our daily life. So let's join our hand to create a better environment for our future children. And if you don't have any more questions, I think we've done. And I'd like to thank Mohammed again for his wonderful literature review and introduction that he made. And we need more of Mohammed, because he comes from the practical life of Carlton in the long years that I have known him. and went and did study in the field that he has experienced as a passionate field in doing his PhD. So I can't, I've been telling many of our youth in looking some ways to progress and to tackle intellectually the challenge that we face. And I see Muhammad taking that role. Make me proud, and I would encourage him and many others also to understand and to have an in-depth understanding of how to challenge the system instead of sitting on the fringes and expect the system to change. Now we have to change with knowledge. Also, Zahra, as a mother, you brought the reality of Somali family into the discussion, which is very important for everyone, not from someone from outside to talk about young, but family value. You live it, you practice it, you brought those two, a young boy and a young girl into successful life. It makes your experience a journey for every one of us, including the Somali families that are in moving forward in this multicultural society. So I really like, and I wish you all the best in your election for, the seat of Jaga Jaga. And we look forward to hearing from you. And look, we will have a survey. We'll share with you. We'll send you an email. We would appreciate once we set the survey of sort of design. We'll appreciate your cooperation in this partnership. We've got Eva with her multicultural evaluation to help us in that evaluation. And I've also got Professor Stephen Shepard helping us from Swinburne University. So, and the community at large, particularly our advisories are more community leaders, because we would like to take journey in consultation of our community. And that's what we established at Africause, because we are part of the community and we would be advised by the community to move forward. And thank you very much for all your contribution and for listening. Every one of you being patient to listen. And I hope you've learned something from today, and more to come. We'll invite you for other stuff as well, and look forward to all of you for that participation, and more participation will come. So thank you, Kate, and thank you, everyone. Zahra, can you move the host to my end? Thanks, Jasper. Thank you.
Yeah, I have your host now.
Did you make me the host? Yes, thank you, Zahra. So I will download the record.
Okay,
and
great.
then we'll get that stuff going. Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the Friday, enjoy the weekend, and I'm going for my prayer now.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.